What if I told you there's a different way to feed your dog? What if I told you there is a dog food revolution going on and that you are invited to it? Well, today we have a real treat because I got to interview Dr. Nick Thompson. Nick is the founder of the Raw Feeding Veterinary Society in the UK. I mean, the guy is a member of the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons. He's a member of the British Veterinary Association. He's the member of the European Society of Veterinary and Comparative Nutrition. And he is the founder of Holistic Vet and a raw pet medic, where he shares his knowledge entirely for free. I mean, the list goes on and on. We could not possibly get anyone with more accolades to talk about your dog's diet than this guy here. What are your main issues surrounding high carbohydrate levels in commercial dog foods? What seems to be the problem there?
Okay, I'm smiling when you ask me that question because it's such a fundamental and easy to answer question. And okay, so how about if I answer it like this, Sam? And thank you very much for inviting me on. It's great to be here to support Teesside and to support the Raw movement up there. That's fabulous, and all power to you, my friend. What would happen if you ate a bag of chips as in British chips, not American chips, which are crisps, obviously? What would happen if you ate a bag of chips with every meal? Answer, you'd be the size of a house within a month or two, okay? Because what happens is these high carbohydrate foods, and we're talking about kibble and we're talking about cans, or anything that's got a high carbohydrate content. When I talk about carbohydrates, I mean grain carbohydrates, because there is a small amount of carbohydrate within vegetables, and I think vegetables are very useful for our dogs. Okay, so veggies, good. Grains, so we're talking wheat and corn and barley and all these, and oats and what have you. Generally, not a great idea. To feed them every day for months and years is a really, really bad idea, because what these things do, these carbs, these are starches, okay? And everybody knows that if you eat something starchy like a potato, it gets broken. Those starch molecules like this, they're chains of sugars. So when you break them down in your enzymes in the gut, they break down to sugar. Sugar then enters your bloodstream, and your body sees that sugar and says, whoa, loads of sugar, let's get it stored. And so it really, oh, look at that. There's another one. Let's get it stored. And so it stores that sugar as fat in and glycogen and as glucose in the tissues. But essentially it stores it because insulin is the hormone of storage, of preparation for winter. Yeah. And so if you're eating these starchy carbohydrates, let's call them starchy carbohydrates because that then differentiates them from veggie, the small amount of veggie carbs that we get. So if you're eating starchy carbohydrates every day, you've got high insulin every day, and that causes you to go into a storage mode. Your body goes into a storage mode, and you can very easily put on weight. And when I say you, I mean dogs. You know, humans and dogs, almost the same thing with their digestive system. The majority of the whole digestive issue is very similar in both. So lots of starchy carbs, lots of insulin, lots of storage. What happens? They put on weight. What happens when they put on weight? Then you are predisposed to diabetes, to having metabolic diseases, kidney disease, liver disease, poor immune function. All these things can come as a direct result of those. Also, we know that obese dogs can live up to 2 years less than their trim counterparts. Okay, so it's a very, very big deal. I'm not just being fattest. I want our dogs to be healthy, happy, and living their best life for the longest possible time, Sam. That's the key to the whole thing. And so that's why I don't like high starchy foods like kibble and cans.
Right, okay. So you were talking before about vegetables. And so
Yeah.
what is the role of vegetables in dog food? Are veggies good or bad for our dogs, and in what quantities?
Okay, veggies are really important in my opinion. Some people disagree, and in some cases, I don't use veggies in my diets. But the way I formulate raw food and fresh food diets is that I will have about 80 or 90% of the bowl will be meat and bone and organ. And they will be in roughly an 80-10-10 proportion. Yeah, 80%, 10%, 10%. Okay. So that's let's call it 80% of the bowl. Yeah. So I see a bowl in front of me and there's a 20% slice where there's nothing there. What I put into that slice, Sam, is it's in the video that I've done, raw feeding the basics. But in a nutshell, that that little quadrant there is we put veggies. There would be green veggies, lightly cooked or fermented, even. Okay. And there would be some NHS, some nuts, herbs, and seeds that have been soaked overnight. And you just blend those down. You mix those with the veggies. And I would also add a source of omega-3. That's one of the best is marine oil. So that would be salmon or haddock or pollock or um, krill or one of these fish oils, because we know that they are very rich in omega-3s. They are animal, yeah, fish animal. That they're not plant derived. Yeah, flax is a source of omegas, but I think one of the best things is omega-3s, because omega-3s very anti-inflammatory. So there you go. That would be my approach.
Fantastic. Let's talk about our dog's teeth, because it seems like periodontal disease is very widespread nowadays. So, can you briefly share the best tips for dental health?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is. In 2003, in the AVMA, the American Veterinary Medicine Association, came out with a statement saying that up to 80% of dogs by the age of 3 have periodontal disease. Okay, which is shocking, absolutely shocking, and it only goes downhill from there. That's 80% of dogs, even in their youth. Okay, so it's a big problem. And it's a big problem because if you get buildup of tartar on the teeth, you can get this periodontal disease, and you can get leakage of these of bacterial toxins and bacteria even into the blood, which can affect cardiac and renal and liver health. Okay, in humans, it's associated with low birth weight babies. If mothers have really bad periodontal disease, it can skew baby health, even when they're in the uterus. So it's a profound impact that periodontal disease. It's not just, oh, the dog's got bad breath. It's a big deal. So anything we can do to avoid that buildup of plaque and then tartar to keep the teeth clean is a really good idea. And I would suggest that the number one thing is bones. Okay. Feeding bones is a very easy thing. It's part of a raw fed dog. If you've got a dog who's eating kibble, then you've got to be very careful with bones. And I won't even comment on that. On a fresh food diet, which is a lightly cooked diet, you can feed bones, but the ideal would be to be feeding bones to a raw fed dog. I'm a big fan of raw food. So how do you feed bones? The answer I've done it in another video, which is called Bones and How to Feed Them. And very simply speaking, it's a bit like the education system. Okay, so the education, you go to primary school, then you go to secondary school, then you go to college, and then maybe beyond that. Yeah, so you've got stages. You start with the really simple stuff, and then you graduate to that, and then you graduate and you graduate. And so when we are introducing any dog, whether they're a puppy or an adult dog who's never had bones before, we go through this education process. Okay, and so down at the bottom end, we have the soft and the easy type of bones, and these would be the chicken carcasses, the turkey carcasses, things like that. One step up, so that's the primary school. Secondary school would be duck necks, turkey necks, chicken wings. So something a little bit more substantial. One step up, that would be lamb ribs, beef ribs. These would be bones that were not weight bearing. Okay, because when you weight bear on a bone, you strengthen that bone and it becomes much more brittle. So for those first three stages, you don't go anywhere near leg bones. Okay, because they're much tougher and they are not appropriate for the dog that isn't used to that yet. Each of these stages would take between 1 and 3 months. Okay, it's education. Okay, it's you have to get used to these things, and you get and yeah. What I say to people, you can't read. You can't read. What would we say? You can't read T.S. Eliot. You can't read Shakespeare until you can read Peter and Jane. You know what I mean? Okay, and so you teach the dog, you teach them Peter and Jane, as it were, and then you go on to something in the middle, Enid Blyton, and by that time they're able to get their head around, they're able to understand what you're doing, and so they might be able to get their heads, they might be able to read and get something from Shakespeare. Yeah, so it's a 3-4 stage process. One up from those softer non-weight bearing bones is the weight bearing bones. Okay, so see, these would be the classic marrow bones, which is actually where most people start, which is a bad, big no-no. Okay, so marrow bones and these big knuckle bones and things like that, they are really tough, and I wouldn't allow a dog who's just starting with bones, whether they're a puppy or an adult, to go anywhere near those until probably a year or two into their bone education. Yeah, so and then once they get to that stage, then they're much better able to do it because they've learned, they've cut their teeth, as it were. And so for me, bones are really major part of keeping your teeth clean. What have dogs been using to keep the teeth clean for 45 million years? Yeah, there weren't any teeth brushes, there weren't, operating suites in veterinary practices where they could clean their teeth. It was just, there's the bones, there's the carcass, and that's it. So Mother Nature has streamlined this process. So that would be number one, bones. Okay, number one, cheap, easy, nutritious, keeps the dog occupied. They love it. I've got 3 sight hounds, and they get this kind of bony material. They get kind of chicken wings every day, and they often have bones in the garden and what have you. So what else can we do to keep the teeth clean? There's 2 other things that come immediately to mind that are very simple. Number one is my mate Connor Brady has a kind of a magic seaweed powder called Canident, and that's a very good product to use to help to keep the teeth clean. I think there's a money back guarantee, so nothing to lose there. You just put a small amount of the seaweed in the food, and that helps to change the saliva and the oral environment so that it softens tartar. Okay, and the other thing that's very useful is Joe Flanagan at Ingenious Products. He's got a a spray which is called Lucar, Lucaa, dental spray, which again changes the microbiome and softens tartar to allow it to break off more easily. Now, final thing to say is if your dog has lots of loose teeth, or they have just, you can hardly see the teeth for the tartar, they may need a dental. They may need to go to the vet, get knocked out, and have their teeth cleaned and loose teeth removed in order to allow them to begin the bone journey.
Phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So we go from periodontal disease to another very prominent disease, which is obesity. And it seems like more and more dogs these days suffer from obesity. And not only they suffer from obesity, but pet parents seem to think this is normal. And because Cookie is a bit chunky, it's funny. And we should encourage that. Could you talk about what the biggest problems with obesity in dogs would be?
Obesity is a it's big deal in humans as well, and in humans it's related to ultra processed food very much. Okay, exercise is part of a healthy diet, but if you're eating ultra processed food, then which is kind of convenient food, packaged food, non-fresh food, it's the kind of food that your granny probably wouldn't even recognize. Okay, so that's how you identify it. It's got lots of ingredients and what have you, and it's the same in the dog world. The big food industry really wants to sell you ultra processed food for your dogs, and you can see ultra processed food for dogs because it's called kibble, or it comes in cans. Yeah, sometimes you can get pouches and things, but that's just a variation on a can. Okay, so if you eat ultra processed food, you're much more predisposed to obesity, primarily because it's very high in carbs. As we discussed earlier, the carbohydrate breaks down to sugars. Sugars increase the insulin. That increases your storage metabolism, and so you are much more likely to gain weight. There's a really great book that you can get in the shops or online called Ultra Processed People by a guy called Chris Van Tulleken. And if anybody's interested in this, and it's a really readable book, it's not academic at all. It's a very readable, entertaining book. Dive into that. And he talks about the obesity epidemic in people, but it's exactly the same in dogs. Why is it a big deal? It is a big deal because obesity is associated with cardiac disease, heart disease. It's associated with liver disease. It's associated with kidney disease. It's associated with musculoskeletal disease. It's associated with hormonal disease. It's, for example, low thyroid disease, diabetes. All of these things are very much there is a parallel. Yeah, the more obese the dog, then the more likely these diseases are to loom on the horizon. Now, it's maybe one of the most important things, though, that because money talks, is that, well, there's two key other elements here. Here we go. There's the you see, it's like when I do this. The other two, again, thank you. Thank you, Internet. They obviously like what I'm doing. I'll take my two things. There's two other really key things. Number one is that obese dogs have been shown to live up to 2 years less long than their trim counterparts. That's number one, okay? And number two is that an obese dog, because of the sickness that comes along with it, will be significantly more expensive to get from cradle to grave. Okay, so there's a disease impact where the dog is going to be less happy than they could be. There is a financial impact, and there is a longevity impact. You're going to have less lifespan, you're going to have less health span, and that's not why you get a dog in the first place. Yeah, you get a dog to go for walks, to sit by you, to keep you warm at night, maybe. They are vital. They're a part of the family. They teach the children. They bring everybody together. They make your heart feel better. Okay. And if they're obese, they may not be on the planet for up to 2 years less time, and they may struggle through that time. So I think it's a wonderful thing to strive towards. Now, if you're looking at your dog as you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh my God, Betsy is a little bit overweight. What am I going to do? How am I going to approach this? You don't need to worry. Talk to your local raw store or your local raw feeding veterinary surgeon, and they will guide you. It's not a difficult process. It doesn't mean that you have to starve the dog. There's lots that you can do. In fact, it's a really wonderful journey that the dog and the owner can take together.
Incredible. Right now, you make the distinction between raw dog food and ultra processed kibble. Now, you
Yeah.
are literally a vet with all the bells and whistles, like all of them, right? We can all agree on that, literally. But
Okay.
you seem to divert from the general advice of
Yeah.
veterinary diets. So, why, in your opinion, fresh chicken, ground beef, and raw meaty bones are better than meat and animal derivatives? It's better than sugar, it's better than cereals, it's better than wheat gluten, it's better than rice. I'm at a loss here. So, why is that?
So are you asking, why do I not follow 90% of vets who think that kibble and cans is fine? Is that about the size of it?
Yeah, or why would you
Okay.
promote raw dog food as opposed to the standard advice?
Yeah, great question. Okay. I could talk to you all day on this, Sam, and I'm sure we can have fantastic conversation. But just to keep it simple, that in 2018, the French did a study on ultra processed food. Okay, they got something like 600,000 people and watched them over 6, 8 years. Okay, and saw the level of disease and how that correlated with the diet. Okay, um, and what they found was that for every 10% increase in ultra processed food, there was a corresponding 10% increase in the risk of cancer. And in women, this was a human study, in women, there was a 12% increase in the risk of breast cancer. Okay. And yet, the big food industry that governs veterinary diets, they recommend 100% kibble, or maybe some cans as well, or 100% cans and a bit of kibble, but there is no real food. So 10% increase in human diets increases cancer by about 10%. And the big food industry with these ultra processed kibble and cans, they are recommending that you feed ultra processed food for life. I don't think it's a difficult stretch of the imagination to realize, and that's just one example. I could give you 20. That's just one example of why I am passionately keen to feed dogs on a species appropriate diet. Yeah.
Oh, could you give me two or three ingredients that you hate to see in dog food, in maybe commercial dog food? Things for people to pay attention to, and things that you think are not very good for dogs?
Okay. So we spoke earlier about the starchy carbohydrates. I think these are completely inappropriate for a facultative carnivore. Okay, dogs are meant to scavenge a mainly meat diet. You know, even a primary school kid would know that, and yet we're feeding them high, in some cases 60% starchy carbohydrates, and I think that that is a really, really bad thing to do. So this would be wheat, wheat starch, oats, corn, maize, all these kind of breakfast cereal type starchy things. Even potato, I'm not a big fan of potato. So that would be number one on my list. Number two on my list would be meat and animal derivatives, because this is a catch-all category for absolutely anything. And the reason I say that, so number one, you don't know what putting in. Number two, you don't really know the quality. In the UK, we've got very strict laws, and so it's not going to be toxic per se, but is it going to be good? I doubt it, because good costs money, and if you're a manufacturer, you're trying to make money, you try and go for the cheapest of ingredients. The reason that meat and animal derivatives is a worry for me is that there are a lot of dogs out there who are sensitive to things like beef and chicken. Those would be the worst. There's a lot of dogs who do great on beef and chicken, but if you've got an itchy dog or a dog whose poos are permanently not great, then beef and chicken would be the things to avoid. And if you're feeding a diet that says lamb on the front, but in the ingredients it's got meat and animal derivatives, you do not know what protein's going into that dog, and that may be completely explanatory for why the dog is itchy or why the dog has got loose poos permanently. Okay, which is not a great way of not great, and it's not great for the owner because they've got to pick it up. the dogs poos. I always do this. Dogs poos you should be able to pick up with two fingers very easily. And if you've got a dog who's got loose poos and suddenly they produce these kind of sausages, you're going to think we're the best thing since sliced bread. Yeah, you and me, Sam. Yeah, but okay, if we can guide them in that direction. But the important thing is the microbiome is going to improve, therefore the immune system is going to improve, and they're going to be healthier. And they're going to squeeze the anal glands better. They're going to have less inflammation in their body, and so it has numerous benefits. The third ingredient that I would say to avoid is kind of E numbers. Yeah, real food doesn't have an E number. Yeah, cabbage, E428, beef, E962. Yeah, it's just absolute madness. So if you look on the back, and there's a compound there which is an E number, I'm really suspicious of that, and for humans as well. But also, if there's an ingredient that you can't read or that you can't even recognize as food, and I'm thinking cobalamin, methylcobalamin, which is one of the B vitamins. You may not be able to read that, but you might have to do a bit of Googling. But if you read it and go, oh my God, that is a chemical, that is a preservative, that is a stabilizer, that is a colorant, that is some kind of flavor enhancer, then you've got to be suspicious. I think everybody knows, Sam, that food is food is food. And if it don't look like food, then it probably isn't, you know? So I think it's another reflection of this whole thing about feeding dogs. It's a really pretty easy thing to do once you get beyond the the big food propaganda, which is this is healthy, this is safe, this is tasty, this is contains all the minerals and vitamins that you need. Okay, that's real food. Doesn't need additives. Real food is real food, and that's really where the buck stops.
And I mean, what a guy. I can't thank Nick enough for his time. He's literally a pioneer, an OG, and a trailblazer of the industry. And what Nick told me is that he has put a set of videos on his website that will make you transition to raw dog food a lot easier. So if you are looking at getting started with your dog's nutrition, or if you want to better it, there isn't a better place than Dr. Nick's website. I am going to leave all the links down below and you can guys check that for yourself. The last thing I will say is that please support Nick and his endeavors, because we need people like him doing what he does every single day.